Kanawitbit. My name is Liv Sydney. I'm an Inuvialuit and Gwich'in artist from Inuvik, Northwest Territories. My practice is mainly printmaking. I paint sometimes, and I work a lot with traditional materials. A lot of my pieces are based on my cultural upbringing. Dunguluk is my Inuvialuit name given to me by my Nanak. I was named after her great aunt, Anna Alisiak, who was a seamstress born in the Mackenzie Delta. Pre-colonization, Inuit names consisted of one word, which made it really difficult for new settlers to identify and classify Inuit. I was raised surrounded by my mother's family, who consisted mainly of very strong Indigenous women, who taught me to love and appreciate my culture. Here in this photo is my Nanak, my Ma, and my Auntie Eva, and a lot of what I do today is working towards honoring their memory. When I was about 13, I was cuddling on the couch with my Nanak when I told her that I wanted to get an inner lip tattoo, kind of as a joke. She then told me that I should get W.3 1647 tattooed on my inner lip, and I didn't really understand what she meant by that. She then explained to me that W.3 1647 was their Eskimo number. This slide contains the numbers of a majority of my family from my mother's side, and was recently given to my mother by her boss. We still have my Ma's physical tag, but unfortunately my Nanak's has been lost. During the colonization of the Arctic, the RCMP had a difficult time identifying Inuit due to the lack of surname or written language. So to combat that, many suggestions were made to fix the Inuit identification problem. One suggestion that came from Dr. A.G. McKinnon was army-like discs that were meant to be worn 24/7. A.G. McKinnon believed the discs would be a good solution to the identification problem because the novelty of the disc would appeal to Inuit. And due to the lack of resources in the Arctic, Inuit would be less likely to lose their belongings as they would find this a valuable piece of identification. The use of Inuit numbers came with mixed opinions, which Barry Pottle addresses in his photography piece, The Awareness Series. One reaction that stands out to me is those of the Inuit from Boothia Peninsula who destroyed their tags as soon as they received them. This was shocking to the RCMP. The map here shows how the Canadian government divided Inuit up into 12 sections, 9 Eastern Arctic sections, as well as 3 Western Arctic sections. The region of W3 is the traditional homelands of my people, the Inuvialuit, which is why all of my family's numbers start with W3. The following numbers are the order in which they were assigned. The use of Inuit tags lasted 30 years from 1941 to 1971 and were phased out due to English names becoming more popular with the help of missionaries and residential school. Here is a photo of my great-great-great-grandfather, Alan Upik, who pre-colonization would have just gone by Upik, but was given a biblical name in order to better identify him and his family, with all of his children receiving the surname Alan. The use of Inuit tags by the Canadian government was an act of dehumanization and an attempt to kill our culture. In the last 50 years, there has not been a public apology by the Canadian government for its use of what they called Eskimo discs. Many Inuit, such as my Nanak, recall being traumatized by the use of these numbers, which in all reality were serial codes to identify Eskimos. Bill Nasagalowak's piece, W.3 1258, addresses how he felt that his identity had been replaced with said serial code. The Inuit mockumentary, Kalunut, Why White People Are Funny, does an amazing job at explaining Inuit tags through satirical comedy of assigning what they call Kalunut tags to white people in Canada, America, and overseas. In class, we discussed truth and reconciliation. I don't know about my fellow Indigenous peers, but I do not feel very reconciled with. So I knew that I wanted to develop a piece that addressed my frustration with the Canadian government in an attempt to help me understand the grief in losing my culture. Quill Christy Peters' article, Hands Off, discusses the act of loving despite genocide and the exploitation of that love through colonial institutions, which reminds me of Rachel Flowers' essay, Refusal to Forgive, in which she discusses the weaponization of Indigenous women's love as a way to demonize and suppress Indigenous women's anger. When Peter Morin visited our class, he discussed two things that stood out to me. The first being his piece, A Tall Tan Indian Declares War on the British Monarchy, which I believe is such a beautiful expression of anger. And secondly, when Morin discussed how it did not feel good to be called angry. But I feel as though I'm still angry, and I've tried to mask that anger with love. So for my final piece, I would like to create tags for A.G. McKinnon as well as D.L. McGeend, who is the man who wrote letters in support of the use of Eskimo tags, to express the anger that I feel and hopefully heal through the process. As for the material I plan on using for my piece, I was originally thinking of painting, but through the discussion that came from my original presentation, I've decided to use copper plates, which I will use etching techniques I've learned from Intaglio to create my final tags. Lastly, I want to give thanks to my mom, whose unending support and love has brought me places that I never dreamt were imaginable. And when I was working on conceptualizing this final piece, my mom said that she would love to see me work on something that involved the Inuit tags, which to me felt like a sign that I was heading in the right direction. And then there's my citations, a bunch of great sources. If I can make one suggestion, it would be that I think that everybody should watch Kaluna, Why White People Are Funny. It's free on the NFB page, and I think it's hilarious. Thank you for watching, and I am excited to hear your feedback.